All right, folks, this is Jack Newtown here, and we are live on the broadcast. Hope everyone's doing okay. I know it's a slow day. I know everyone is partying over Thanksgiving weekend, and they're probably in their sleep, half dead sleep, because of all the craziness and madness and all the other spectacle that went on the Thanksgiving weekend. So get your butts back together and let's get to work and let's get this thing started. Not going to be here forever. Maybe, hopefully, I don't reach over 2 hours, put it that way. Hopefully, I don't. What's going on, Mr. Dome? Donna is in the building. Mr. Dome is in the building. Now, I've talked about this for quite some time, but now the voices are getting louder. Who actually killed Malcolm X? Who killed Malcolm X? Did J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI assassinate Malcolm X, Malikah Shabazz? Because we're getting reports that the two men they claimed that shot and killed Malcolm X were exonerated. Two of them weren't even there. Now, the first suspect was there. He was captured. He got shot in the leg by one of Malcolm's bodyguards. And it was four others who were there that they did not even ID or even let alone pursue. Actually, the feds covered for them. And the main guy, who was the shotgun man, all these years was living in Newark, New Jersey, as a community leader. This mystery is becoming more stranger and stranger and stranger than ever. They know who killed Malcolm, but the question is, did J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI, along with the cooperation of the Nation of Islam, assassinate Malcolm X because he was the greatest threat to Elijah Muhammad? Now, many in the Nation of Islam believe that Elijah Muhammad was the second coming of Muhammad, of the Prophet Muhammad. And everyone has flaws, but not at this level. And could it have been that Elijah Muhammad felt his power threatened by a straight shooter named Malcolm X? Because, see, Malcolm X didn't cut no corners. He called it right down the middle. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. He called it straight right down the pipe. And that was the problem. What's going on, Abby? What's going on, Abby? I think I said hello to everybody. Malcolm X didn't play games. He was more about the people than the Nation of Islam. The Nation of Islam, unfortunately, was more about business than the welfare of the people. But business first. That's what there was more of. Malcolm was more about liberation. Elijah was more about a mixture of liberation with business, of course. Now, of course, you need funding for the revolution. You need funding for liberation. Of course, we know that. But I personally believe, looking through the history, that Elijah Muhammad put profit over people and his sexual prowess over people, if you know what I mean. With teenage girls, Teenage girls. Now, if he was some Islamic country, he would have got away with it legally. But in America, this is what he was doing. These are facts. And I've come to terms that the Nation of Islam had it out for Malcolm because Malcolm was such a great orator in his short term in the mosque. He was a rising star. People started to follow him. People started to believe him because he, what you call, he was like another Thomas Sankara. He was an upright man. Thomas Sankara was an upright man. They assassinated Thomas Sankara. Okay, about Keisha, I forgot I don't want to pronounce the country because I may sound it right, but Keisha Fasho. Just like Malcolm, Thomas Sankara was an upright man. He opposed the French's money. He opposed the French's finances. He opposed the French's influence. Thomas Sankara kicked out the French out of his country. And of course, they assassinated him in response of getting rid of France and its influence and its money. There was another leader that was assassinated by the government. So what I'm going to do is read a couple articles and do a little. Abby, I saw what you emailed me about that clip about Louis Farrakhan. I'll play that, and then I'm gonna play. Well, you're gonna hear the audio version of it. I'm not gonna put the video on here because of okay, is it over? Okay, because of right agreements. So I won't show the video of right agreements. But I'll show a few articles. Let's get started. Let's go ahead and get started with this. I'm not going to keep y'all out here forever. I shouldn't do that. Slides. Okay. Interesting. This is a new feature called slides. Okay. Well, that's quite interesting. Let's do this. Here we go. Let's start with this. From the Richmond Free Press. 2 men exonerated in assassination of Malcolm X after more than 50 years. Let me make sure y'all can see this better. There we go. Is that better? Can y'all see? Can y'all now see this one? Can y'all? Okay, I hope y'all do. All right. More than a half century after the assassination of Malcolm X, 2 of his convicted killers were exonerated last week after decades of doubt about who was responsible for the civil rights icon's death. Manhattan Judge Ellen Bibbin on November 18 dismissed the convictions of Muhammad Aziz and the late Khalil Islam after prosecutors and the men's lawyer said a renewed investigation found new evidence that undermined the case against the men and determined that authorities withheld some of what they knew. The event have brought us to court today should never have occurred, Mr. Aziz told the court. I am an 83-year-old man who was victimized by the criminal justice system. It pained Mr. Islam's son, Amin Johnson, and Shahid Johnson that their parents died before seeing the conviction reversed. Still, Amin Johnson said his father would have been ecstatic to clear his name. Reputation meant a lot to him, the son said, and now we don't have to watch over our backs, worrying about any repercussions about who thought that he might have been one that killed Malcolm X. Mr. Aziz and Mr. Islam, who maintained their innocence from the start in the February 21st, 1965 killing at the Upper Manhattan's Audubon Ballroom, were paroled in the 1980s. Mr. Islam died in 2009. There can be no question that this is a case that cries out for fundamental justice, Judge Bibbin said. Malcolm X gained national prominence as the voice of the Nation of Islam, exhorting Black people to claim their civil rights by any means necessary. His autobiography, written by Alex Haley, remains a classic work of modern American literature. Near the end of Malcolm X's life, he split with the Nation of Islam and after a trip to Mecca started speaking about the potential for racial unity. It earned him the ire of some of the Nation of Islam who saw him as a traitor. He was shot to death while beginning a speech in the Audubon Ballroom in New York. He was 39 years old. Mr. Aziz and Mr. Islam, then known as Norman 3X Butler and Thomas 15X Johnson, and the third man were convicted of murder in March of 1966. They were sentenced to life in prison. The third man, Muhammad Abdul Aziz, also known as Talmade Hayer, and Thomas Hagen, admitted to shooting Malcolm X, but said neither Mr. Aziz nor Mr. Islam was involved. The two offered alibis and no physical evidence linked to them in the crime. The case hinged on eyewitnesses, although there were inconsistencies in their testimony. Mr. Halim was paroled in 2010. Though a relative, he declined to comment last week on exonerations. He identified some of the men as accomplices, but no one else has ever been held accountable for the crime. The reinvestigation found that the FBI and police failed to turn over evidence that cast significant doubt on Mr. Islam and Mr. Aziz as suspects, according to a court filing. The evidence included witnesses who couldn't identify Mr. Islam, implicated other suspects in groups, and described a shotgun-wielding assassin who didn't match Mr. Islam, the man prosecutors said bore that weapon. Investigators also found an FBI file on the man Mr. Halim identified after the trial as one of his accomplices and who fit some other leads. And the records show that the late FBI Director J. Edgar, the pedophile, boy-loving, black boy-loving, cuck man, cross-dressing tranny Hoover, ordered agents to tell witnesses not to reveal that they were informants when talking with police and prosecutors, Manhattan District Attorney Cyrus Vance Jr. said last week. New York Police Department records show there were undercover officers in the ballroom at the time of the killing, a fact prosecutors apparently knew before trial, but don't appear to have told defense lawyers, the court filing said. One undercover officer later testified as an unrelated trial that he's been acting as part of Malcolm X's security team and had walloped Mr. Harlem with a chair, a blow that didn't jibe with testimony from other witnesses at the alleged assassin's trial. Meanwhile, a witness who came forward in recent years told investigators that he'd spoken with Mr. Aziz shortly after the killing on Mr. Aziz's home phone. Mr. Aziz said that from the start that he was home that day with a leg injury. There's one ultimate conclusion. Mr. Aziz, Mr. Islam were wrongfully convicted of this crime, and there is no prospect of retrying a 56-year-old case in which every witnesses who testified has died and the physical evidence is gone. Mr. Vance says he apologized for law enforcement's serious, unacceptable violations of law and the public trust. So, apology. Oh, I'm sorry. We have wrongfully convicted you of a crime that you did not do and that you got hunted down for something you did not do. Wow. An apology. How about reparations? The FBI and New York Police Department had evidence of Mr. Aziz and Mr. Islam's within hours, but ignored and suppressed it, said one of their attorneys, Deborah Francois, of how or why it recounts numerous tips and leads, but doesn't draw any conclusions about who might have been involved besides Mr. Halim. The NYPD and the FBI said on November 17 they have cooperated fully with the reinvestigation bullshit. They declined to comment further. NYPD Chief of Patrol Juanita Holmes said on November 18 that she felt for Malcolm X's family and for Mr. Aziz, Mr. Islam, we are responsible for withholding information. Yes, and it's called compensation. We'd like to see that pretty soon. Attorneys, scholars, journalists, and others have long raised questions about the convictions, and alternate theories and accusations have swirled around the case. After Netflix aired the documentary series Who Killed Malcolm X early last year, Mr. Vance's office said it was taking a fresh look. It will be great if this murder was solved, but it's not solved, said Tamara Payne, who co-authored the Pulitzer Prize-winning book The Dead Are Rising: Life and Accusation her late father, Les Payne. The damage is done, but our hope is that we learn from this, Miss Payne said. Okay, well, okay, get this bastard out of here. Okay. All right. So the two men they claim that did not do it. They actually did not do it. The whole time, many have thought they did it. And people in the prison thought they didn't do it because they would have been dead already. Think about it. They would have killed these men if they knew they killed Malcolm X. But the prison knew that they didn't kill Malcolm X. They knew who did it. They knew who did it. They knew who did it. And this is, and I'm going to show you something else. And then we're going to get to one of the clips, and then we're going to play, a good number of this documentary. Again, I can only play the audio. I can't show the video because, again, we don't want Tubi to get Luby with me. So let's share this. All right, let's do this right here. Here we go. Good old Quintupello. Quintupello. Now, this is the problem with this, our country, is these federal government ideal clan masters. Now, let's go ahead and crank this up. Quintupello Counterintelligence Program. Series of covert and illegal projects conducted by the United States FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigations, aimed at surveilling, infiltrating, discrediting, and disrupting domestic American political organizations. FBI records show Quintupello resources targeted groups and individuals the FBI deemed subversive, including feminist organizations, the Communist Party USA, anti-Vietnam War organizers, activists of the civil rights movement and Black Power movement, e.g. Martin Luther King Jr., the Nation of Islam, and the Black Panther Party, environmentalists and animal rights organizations, the American Indian movement, AIM, independence movement include Puerto Rican independence groups such as the Young Lords, which Geraldo Rivera was a lawyer for, and the Puerto Rican Socialist Party, a variety of organizations that were part of the broader New Left and right-wing groups such as the Ku Klux Klan and the National States Rights Party. 1971, San Diego, the FBI financed and armed and controlled an extreme right-wing group of former members of the Minutemen Anti-Communist Parliamentary Organization, transforming them into the called the Secret Army Organization that targeted groups, activists, and leaders involved in anti-war movement using both intimidation and violent acts. The FBI has used covert operations against domestic political groups since its inception. However, covert operations under the official Quintupello label took place between 1956 and 1971. Let me make sure there we go. Oh, crap. Here we go. 1956, many of the tactics used in Quintupello program, okay, where is that at? Okay, has included discrediting targets through psychological warfare, smearing individuals and groups using forged documents, and by planting false reports in the media. Harassment, wrongful imprisonment. Harassment is gang stalking. Wrongful imprisonment, illegal violence, and assassination. According to a Senate report, the FBI's motivation was protecting national security, which is bullshit, preventing violence, which are the ones that created violence, and maintaining existing social political order, which means slavery. Beginning in 1969, leaders of the Black Panther Party were targeted by the Quintuplero and neutralized by being assassinated, imprisoned, publicly humiliated, or falsely charged with crimes. Some of the Black Panthers targeted include Fred Hampton, was assassinated by the Chicago PD as well as the FBI, Mark Clark, Zad Shakur, Geronimo Pratt, Munya Abu-Jamal, which Munya Abu-Jamal still is currently in prison for something he didn't do ever since he was 16 years old, and Marshall Conway. Common tactics used by Quintuplero were perjury, witness harassment, witness intimidation, and withholding of exculpatory evidence. FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover issued directives governing Quintuplero, ordered FBI agents to expose, disrupt, discredit, or otherwise neutralize the activities of these movements, especially of their leaders. Under Hoover, the agent in charge of Quintuplero was William C. Sullivan. Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy personally authorized some of the programs. Oh, I thought Kennedy was a good guy. I thought the Kennedys were for Black people. I thought Kennedy loved everybody. Bullshit. Given written approval for limited wiretapping of Martin Luther King's phones on a trial basis for a month or so, Hoover extended the clearance with his men were unshackled to look for evidence in any areas of King's life they deemed worthy. Now, it began in August of 1956, designed to increase factionalism, cause disruption, and win deflections. Inside the Communist Party USA, tactics include anonymous phone calls, IRS audits, which they were fake audits, which means they lied about what you actually owe, and the creation of documents that would divide the American Communist Organization internally. October 1956 memo from Hoover reclassified the FBI's ongoing surveillance of Black leaders, including those within Quintuplero, with justification the movement was infiltrated by communists. 1956, Hoover set open and leveraged the NASA Dr. T.R.M. Howard, a civil rights leader, surgeon, and wealthy entrepreneur in Mississippi who had criticized the FBI inaction in solving recent murders of George W. Lee, Emmett Till, and other African Americans in the South. When the Southern Christian Leadership Conference and African American Civil Rights Organization was founded in 1957, the FBI began to monitor and target the group almost immediately, focusing particularly on Bayard Rustin, Stanley Levison, and eventually Martin Luther King Jr. After the 1963 March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, Hoover singled out King as a major target for Quintuplero. Under pressure from Hoover to focus on King, Sullivan wrote. Okay. They came after King. Okay, let's focus on Malcolm X. During the same period, the program also targeted Malcolm X. While an FBI spokesman has denied that the FBI was directly involved with Malcolm's murder in 1965, it is documented that the Bureau worked to widen the rift between Malcolm and Elijah Muhammad through infiltration and the sparking of acrimonious debates within the organization, rumor mongering, and other tactics, subterfuge, which they called it subterfuge, and other tactics designed to foster internal disputes, which ultimately led to Malcolm's assassination. The FBI heavily infiltrated Malcolm's organization of Afro-American Unity in the final months of his life. The Pulitzer Prize-winning biography of Malcolm X by Manon Marabell asserts that most of the men who plotted Malcolm's assassination were never apprehended, that the full extent of the FBI's involvement in his death cannot be known. March 16, 1968 memo stated the program's goal was to prevent the coalition of militant Black nationalist groups to prevent the rise of a messiah who could unify the militant black nationalist movement to pinpoint potential troublemakers and neutralize them before they exercise their potential for violence against authorities to prevent militant black nationalist groups and leaders from gaining respectability. Sounds like Jesus, don't it? By discrediting them to both the responsible community. Now, I'm going to pause this for a second. Now, does this sound like Jesus? Was Jesus discredited? Was he slandered? Was he falsely accused? Was he gang stalked? And then eventually assassinated? Sounds familiar. By discrediting them both responsibility community and to liberals who have vestiges of sympathy and to prevent the long-range growth of militant black organizations, especially among youth. Dr. King was said to have potential to be the Messiah figure should he abandon nonviolence and integration, and Stokely Carmichael was known to have the necessary charisma to be a real threat in this way, as he was portrayed as someone who espoused a much more militant vision of black power. While the FBI was particularly concerned with leaders and organizers, they did not limit their scope on the target to heads of organizations, individuals such as writers, while also listed them on the targets of operations. So anybody who was considered a threat, a threat to the so-called FBI power structure, and there's Fred Hampton right there. They put 100 bullet holes in this man. It's a dirty game, people. A very dirty game. Now, what I like to show you, let me see if I can do this. Let me see. Let me pull this up. I'm going to show this real quick. But yeah, let me do this instead. Hold on. Oh, give me a second. Let me do this.
Thank you very much for agreeing to hear us today and to have us before you on this matter. We are moving today to vacate the convictions and dismiss the indictments of Muhammad Aziz and Khalil Islam for the assassination of Malcolm X on February 21, 1965. We have obtained dozens and dozens of reports from the FBI and the NYPD's Bureau of Special Services and Investigations. These records include FBI reports of witnesses who failed to identify Mr. Islam and who implicated other subjects and suspects. And significantly, we now have reports revealing that on orders from Director J. Edgar Hoover himself, the FBI ordered multiple witnesses not to tell police or prosecutors that they were, in fact, FBI informants. Many of those documents were exculpatory. None of them were disclosed to the defense. Without these files, it is clear these men did not receive a fair trial. And in our opinion, their convictions must be vacated.
The event that brought us to court today should never have occurred. Those events were and are the result of a process that was corrupt to its core, one that was all too familiar to Black people in 2021. While I do not need this court, these prosecutors, or a piece of paper to tell me I'm innocent, I am very glad that my family, my friends, and the attorneys who have worked and supported me all of these years are finally saying the truth that we have all known, officially recognized. I'm an 83-year-old man who was victimized by the criminal justice system. I do not know how many more years of creative activity I have. However, I hope the same system that was responsible for this travesty of justice also takes responsibility for the immeasurable harm it caused to me during the last 55 or 56 years. Thank you, Your Honor.
Dismissal of the indictment is the full extent of this court's authority. But for the reasons set forth in the joint application and based on the record that has been made today, this court's mandate requires that the judgments of conviction be vacated and that the indictment against Mr. Aziz and Mr. Islam be dismissed. The joint motion is hereby granted, and the record
All right. So you see, they were exonerated based on the evidence that was suppressed by the FBI as well as the New York Police Department. Now, let's play that clip. Let me do this. Hold on. Where is that thing? Let's see. Where is that? Okay, here we go. I see it in the thing. And we let's do this right here. Hold on one moment. 1 second. Where's that thing? Here we go.
Assalamu alaikum.
Get your hand out of my pocket! Get your hand out of my pocket, nigga! Get your hands out of my
Brother,
pocket!
There he is.
brother, please hold it. Calm down, please, brother.
And he got what he asked for. And those who killed him, they weren't sneaking behind no damn counter. They came in the place where the man was preaching and killed him in front of his own followers. That's fearless men.
I'm real thankful of my brother, Malcolm. Yes, sir. Who has, why, this is a real disciple. You will have to kill this
Every Muslim that loved Elijah Muhammad would have killed Malcolm if we had gotten a chance. No, I don't need no damn applause. I want you to think now.
I heard shots, and I saw people crawling on the floor. And so I got down too. Then when I was looking out, and I saw someone look in amazement to the front, I knew they had shot my husband.
In charge of the kill team would be a Nation of Islam lieutenant from Newark, New Jersey's Mosque number 25, named Linwood X. Linwood entered the ballroom wearing his Nation of Islam pin on the lapel of his suit jacket. It was one of several ruses to throw Malcolm's security guards off guard. Another disturbing fact is that two of the guards who were standing at the front of the stage, supposedly to protect Malcolm, were former Nation of Islam members who were under Linwood X. They were Charles 26X Blackwell and Robert 35X Smith, former members of the Newark, New Jersey Mosque.
His popularity had begun to surpass that of Elijah Muhammad.
There was a dynamic inside of the nation that troubled Brother Malcolm at the highest echelon of leadership.
Well, the fact of the
there
matter...
was envy. There was envy.
Envy of Malcolm.
Of Malcolm.
By you?
No, never by me.
Never by you?
Never by me. Never.
God has made me a better man for you than Malcolm X. I'm standing where Malcolm would have stood if he had the character to stand where I'm standing.
Do you think that Malcolm X gave up Elijah Muhammad because of some sex thing? Do you really think it's that shallow? How could he? How many wives did Prophet Muhammad have, Brother Baghdadi?
Now, this is where I don't have any respect for Farrakhan. Just listen carefully.
Some people say 9, some people say 11. Now, when Malcolm was slandering the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, talking about teenage secretaries, didn't the Prophet take a wife who was a pre-teenager? What was her name? Aisha. When he married her, how old was she? She was 11 years old.
Did y'all hear that? Did y'all hear that? Did y'all hear that? Did y'all hear that? Look, here's my thing. I can't control what's in your mind. I can't control what you look at online. I can't control that. But let not thoughts become actions. And this is a warning to all you guys and girls out there who are thinking about an underage individual to have sex with. Don't do it. You will go to prison. You will meet Big Bubba or Big Barbara. They will stab you in the yard. You will be considered a chomo. Don't do it. Whatever is thoughts in your head, you better battle that out. Do not act upon those thoughts. Play that again.
She was 11 years old. She was 11 years old. She was, when he married her, how old was she? She was 11 years old. When he married her, how old was she? She was 11 years old. When he married her, how old was she? She was 11 years old. When he married her, how old was she? She was 11 years old. When he married her, how old was she? She was 11 years old. But he did not have conjugal relations with her until what year? They say 14. Well, Malcolm, how you going to leave Elijah, who had wives, some of them young women?
Number one, if you notice, the stick that I always used in presenting, representing, and defending the Muslim movement was the fact that it had the ability to reform the morals of the so-called Negro community. It eliminated drug addiction, alcoholism, fornication, adultery, loose sexual behavior, which meant that it eliminated bastard babies, illegitimate children. Well, as long as I knew that this was what it represented and it gave me a strong stick, I could represent it and defend it. But we had a law which was that whenever any Muslim became involved in any kind of sexual relationship with someone to whom they weren't married, that person would be brought before the Muslim community, humiliated, and then isolated for from 1 to 5 years. This was our law. Well, in 1954, a teenage sister left Detroit and became one of Mr. Muhammad's personal secretaries. And there in the Chicago office, she became pregnant after being there for a year. And she was brought before the Muslim community and humiliated and isolated. And a year later, another secretary, this time one from Lansing, Michigan, came to Chicago. She also became pregnant. She was brought before the community and humiliated and isolated.
They claim that the daughter died from cancer, BG, allegedly.
And because the other person was never brought forth during this court session, it was concluded by all of Mr. Muhammad's followers that it was a non-Muslim who was the other party. Well, we grew so rapidly until that in 1957 or 58, the secretarial staff was expanded to, I think, 8 teenage sisters. In 1959, 6 of them disappeared. 2 of them reappeared in Philadelphia about 2 or 3 months later, and they were all right. The other 4 reappeared in 1960. All 4 of them had babies. All 4 of them had become involved with someone and become pregnant and had these children. So it was, from what I now know, when the 4 of them got back to Chicago and began to compare notes, they found that the same man had told all of them the same story and had made all of them pregnant, that the same man was the father of all 4 of their children and had also been the father of the children brought forth by the 2 secretaries who preceded them. So this story was kept among these sisters until 1962. 2 of them rebelled against the person who was responsible and began to tell the story all over the city of Chicago. It caused many of the Muslims in the Chicago mosque to leave and go back out in the street. They knew it, and I knew nothing about it until 1963 when Mr. Muhammad's son, who had been in prison, came out, and he had been a minister, and he was very religious and spiritual, and when he began to hear these rumors around Chicago, he went to one of the sisters, and the sister admitted to him that the rumor was true, and it was he who first told me about it. And when he told me about it, I wrote to Mr. Muhammad and told him about it, and he admitted that he had a knowledge of it, and that he'd given me a religious explanation that would fit into prophecy and all of that, so I was quiet. And it wasn't until October of 1963 that it came up again. And when it came up again, I realized that the same person who had made these other...
So what happened was Malcolm did question Elijah Muhammad, and out of respect of Elijah Muhammad, he kept quiet until, Abby, his own son told him. One of Elijah Muhammad's sons told Malcolm about what was going on. And Malcolm kind of, being a good soldier, not trying to check his leader, but trying to, ask him, is this true? And then Elijah Muhammad did acknowledge it, but he said, I'll give you a religious explanation in due time. So Malcolm waited. He waited for that religious explanation until this.
Sisters pregnant was still busy doing the same thing. He hadn't stopped. 2 of the sisters had 2 children by the same man. And one of those 2 sisters was pregnant still, getting ready to have a 3rd child by the...
Oh, ex-secretaries named Muhammad in paternity suits. Never mind. I won't make a statement. 2 former secretaries of Elijah Muhammad's named the 67-year-old Muslim leader in paternity suits filed in Superior Court of Los Angeles. Suit filed by Lucille Rosary said Muhammad fathered her 2 daughters, aged 4 and 2.5, and conceived a 3rd child. She is now expecting. Another suit filed by Evelyn Williams said her 4-year-old daughter was fathered by Muhammad. The suits filed by attorney Gladys Towles Root on behalf of the 2 women asked that Muhammad be named the legal father and be compelled to pay child support. The 2 women previously worked as secretaries at the Muslim headquarters in Chicago. Okay, I think this is kind of pausing. Okay,
movement and follow me. In that scenario, was Malcolm worthy to sit in the seat of Elijah Muhammad and lead and be a redeemer of our people? Wait. How many of you ever read the story in the Bible of Noah and his sons? Did you know that Noah had 3 sons? Noah got all of them out of the flood. They landed on Mount Ararat. You remember? According to the Bible. He sent a raven out. The raven didn't come back. He sent a dove out. The dove came back. He came outside of the ark. According to the Bible, he got drunk. and was naked laying in the sand.
Now, Mount Ararat is in Turkey. It's in modern day Turkey. Mount Ararat, that's where Noah's Ark is actually at. Is in the mountain. The Ark is actually in the mountain, on top of the mountain, inside the mountain. It is like, homesteaded inside the mountain. Yes, it's Mount Ararat, Turkey.
2 sons refused to look on his nakedness and covered him. And another son called Ham looked down at his nakedness and mocked the man who got
Don't try to say that Malcolm X is Ham.
him out of the flood. And Noah cursed him.
All right, brothers and sisters, this behind me is the home of Malcolm X. Minister Louis Farrakhan's brother, Alvin Farrakhan, stayed right there. Turn that camera around. Where you're looking at Danny's grocery store, right above, he stayed in apartment 2B. That's Alvin Farrakhan. Again, the proximity. Just for your information.
Somebody threw some bombs inside my house. Normally, I wouldn't get excited over a few bombs, but the ones who threw these not only aimed them in rooms where there was no one.
Oh, Alvin Farrakhan, Louis Farrakhan's half brother, live up the street from Malcolm. Very interesting.
But aimed them in rooms where 3 of my daughters sleep. 1 daughter 6, 1 daughter 4, and 1 daughter 2. And since I am quite certain that those who threw the bombs knew my house well enough to know where everyone was sleeping.
All right. All righty. Now it's time to get into the documento. I'm not going to show the video, but I will play the audio of it. That I will do. Who killed Malcolm X? Let's get started. Of course, we're going to play in Pop Player. Going to turn this up.
Malcolm's death never sat right with me. This is a rough hood. What we're doing makes me nervous.
Asking who's guilty of Malcolm's assassination is a dangerous question to ask.
That's not something that we talk about. Leave it alone. What is the real story? You know who did it.
It's important to get answers about who gunned down my father.
Malcolm knew he was going to die by someone else. It was coming. He was predicting it, even. Malcolm spent the night of February 20th, 1965 in the Hilton Hotel. He had a big rally the next day. He wanted to find a safe place that no one knew where he was staying so he could collect his thoughts. He was awakened by a phone call in the morning, and the person on the other end of the line said something that let him know that someone knew where he was at, that he could be gotten anywhere, essentially. Called his wife Betty. He said, I want you to come, I want you to bring the girls. And that's what you did.
My wife was pleased that it was clear, bright Sunday morning. When we walked into the ballroom, we sat about 8 to 10 rows from the stage. I could see Betty and I think one or more of the children with her.
I got there a little bit early, and when Brother Malcolm came in, it was the first time I'd ever seen him where he looked a little harried. As though the pressures were getting on him.
He knew at that point that time was running out for him. All the signs were there. And that's why none of his invited speakers that were supposed to appear on that stage with him that day, none of them showed up. Everyone knew that this man was in trouble. This man was hot.
I remember him saying, the way I feel today, I shouldn't even be here. And myself and about 2 of us, people backstage, we said, well, why don't you go home? People will understand. You know, you've been under a lot of pressure over the last 3 weeks. And he said, no, they want to hear me, what I have to say about the firearm.
As many of you know, Sunday morning about 3 o'clock, somebody threw some bombs inside my house. I'm telling you these things because it has reached a point where I feel that black people in this country need to know what's going on. And I'm talking about an organization which I had a hand in building, which I had a hand in organizing.
By the time he left the Nation of Islam, Malcolm had a lot of enemies. The Nation of Islam was a pure dictatorship. Elijah Muhammad was at the top, and Malcolm was seen as a traitor because he had turned on his leader who had raised him up from a common criminal and put him on a pinnacle before the world. Also, the federal government, the FBI, was definitely afraid of someone like Malcolm X. And one of the most perplexing details about this story is the fact that there was an absence of any kind of police force in and around the Autobahn that afternoon. This was very strange, especially given the recent threats that were made on his life.
Usually at the rallies at the Audubon Ballroom, there'd be up to 24 police officers stationed outside. And on that day, there were only 2 uniformed officers, and they're stationed upstairs, inside, away from the ballroom. So the deterrent effect of having law enforcement present was not there.
It kind of gave a kind of menacing vibe to the whole scene. Where was this police presence?
Try to remember just exactly what happened.
Well, he had just got up to open up, and he was speaking. I don't remember exact words he was saying.
Malcolm goes to the rostrum and he gave the greeting.
At that point, rumbling broke out behind us. So everybody in the place naturally turned around a little.
I remember Malcolm was raising his hand saying, all right, everybody be cool now, or something to that effect. I said to myself, why don't they cut that out? I want to hear Malcolm for this program.
And a burly, dark-skinned man walked up to the stage and pulled from under his coat a sawed-off shotgun.
And just then the gunfire went off.
Next thing I know, 2 other fellows jumped up. The shooting was cleared up.
I remember there were so many shots that were fired. It was like warfare.
I saw people crawling on the floor. So I got down too. And my children were crying, you know, what's going on? What's going on? Are they going to shoot us? Then I saw someone look in amazement to the front. I knew they had shot my husband.
I ran down there and took him on the stage. And his shirt was open, and I saw his bullet holes in his body. And he was gasping. And I remember thinking to myself, he's gonna die, he's gonna die.
My husband was all I had. I mean, he was everything to me and my children. He said that he'd always loved me and provided for us.
We're not brutalized because we're Muslims. We're not brutalized because we're Catholics. We're brutalized because we are black people. people in America.
If you're looking at the genealogy of the anger and activism in this country, we see lots of it descending from Malcolm.
If they want us to turn the other cheek, teach white people to turn the other cheek. And if they want us to love our enemy, teach white people to love their enemy.
Malcolm was the primary articulator of our cause and our case against America, against white supremacy in the United States.
Right. When the police arrived at the Autobahn, there was no sense of urgency. This was noticed by a lot of people, almost as if they knew this was going to happen, almost as if they wanted it to happen.
The police, they looked so nonchalant. It just really, it angered me when I saw it. They were just strolling through the autumn like it was some Sunday stroll in Central Park. And people were on the floor, chairs overturned. People were still crying and screaming.
The crime scene was a total mess. The whole place was in total disarray. There was nothing to see at the scene that would help me as a lawyer on the case. We knew that Malcolm had stood up in front of a very crowded ballroom and that the shooters massacred for the police was to interview every single person that they could identify. Who'd you sit next to? Who'd you sit next to? Who do you know? Who did you see?
Did you see what happened, sir? I just came in when it all happened. All I could see was smoke and shooting. Did you see what happened here? No. I see two men rushing into the platform.
They knew almost nobody to start with. And then they began to find names as they went through. I mean, it wasn't Sherlock Holmes, you know. Who'd you see? Did you recognize anybody? Some people did.
Two fellas, one was a black Muslim, ran and started shooting.
They were black?
Yes, sir. They were black Muslims, so I recognize it.
The day of the murder, which was a Sunday morning, I was laying across the couch with my foot up, and I heard it over the radio.
Breaking news out of New York City. 4 bullets from an assassin's gun have taken the life of black nationalist leader Malcolm X.
4 days later, they came and got me. The fact is, I spent 20 years in prison for a crime that I didn't commit.
What's your wire? Has he signed the statement, sir?
On February the 26th, Norman 3X Butler, who is a lieutenant, he's arrested. And then on March the 3rd, Thomas 15X Johnson is arrested.
We were able to arrest the third suspect this afternoon in the assassination of Malcolm X.
You don't have lentil soup today?
Lentil soup?
Yes.
We do have it, but we don't put on the buffet. If you want to have it, we can get it for you. It's a lentil soup.
Yes.
Okay, I'll get it when you sit at the table.
Lentils and navy beans we eat.
This is a fresh.
But not the lime beans or black-eyed peas. This is what the messenger teaches.
Is it fresh tandoori chicken from the lady oven?
I had before, okay.
Did you play a part in having Malcolm get killed?
I could have if I wanted to.
It's a lentil soup, the yellow color.
You put it right there. But I don't know who killed him. I know the messenger didn't. I know I didn't order it. You know. Nobody from the FBI or local authority, they never asked us anything about it. They've written in the papers that we ordered from Malcolm to be killed, but we didn't. You know, the only Elijah Muhammad was a wise man. They wouldn't do such a stupid thing as to order someone, you know, to be killed. Malcolm, anyone else. He hadn't been for the messenger saying leave him alone, then he would have been killed sooner than he was.
The key to understanding Malcolm's case
is that from the very beginning, no one in the power structure gave a damn about what happened.
All right, we're going to play part 2. Now, I got to skip through this stuff just to kind of avoid some certain things. Started with, yes, pot player. Oh, not right now.
The Muslims say that this elite secret army is to be used for defensive purposes.
The FOI's Fruit of Islam.
Scenes of the Fruit of Islam.
We were Muslims. We had a flag, the sun, the moon, and the stars. We had a fight song. We are fighting for Islam, and we shall surely win with our Savior Allah, the universal King. We are united by His nation and called by His name. We would drill. We were able to do all of these things to inspire us. This is what the teachers of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad did for us.
The military unit meets every Sunday morning, the national meeting time, at Muslim Mosque number 29. It undergoes intensive military training, including judo and karate.
The fruit is in manhood, and we was taught to fight. There wasn't no doubt about that. We didn't take no stock from nobody. We didn't carry no weapons, but we were taught to fight.
All 3 of the accused assassins were members of the FOI, or the Fruit of Islam, and their whole paramilitary structure. According to the government, there were 2 basic elements to the theory of the assassination of Malcolm X. Number 1, there were 3 assassins, and number 2, that the epicenter of the plot was Mosque number 7 in Harlem. Talmadge Hayer was the only one that was captured at the scene. And when he took the stand, he told them that there were actually 4 other accomplices, plus himself. He said very clearly that the 2 other men being tried had nothing to do with it. And he made that clear, but he wasn't believed.
So this is the 1964 to 65 DA homicide book. And you see that they've entered the name of defendants, Talmadge Hayer, and then added in Butler and Johnson.
Okay.
And then here's photographs of Hayer in his hospital bed. Prisoner could not be photographed standing up by order of his doctor because he's been shot in the leg. A very defiant look.
Yeah, he is. He knows what kind of trouble he's in, too.
Yeah.
Hayer saw himself as a loyal soldier who wanted to protect the Nation of Islam, even as he watched 2 apparently innocent brothers get convicted and sentenced to life.
And he knows he just threw his life away.
For 12 long years, Talmadge Hayer never revealed the identity of the 4 men who participated in the assassination of Malcolm X with him. In 1977, after Elijah Muhammad died and the pressures of the old NOI had lifted, he finally filed an affidavit in which he, for the first time, named the men he said were his actual accomplices: Benjamin Thomas, Leon Davis, William X, and someone named Wilbur or Kimber.
Finally, he gave me, and I have the affidavit here, he gave me a sworn affidavit giving the identities of the 4 men who, with Hayer, had done the job. They were all identified in great detail where they worked, what they looked like, where they lived, and so on.
William Kunstler, the famous defense lawyer, tried to get the case reopened to clear the names of the men sitting in jail, but the judge refused. No one went in search of any of these other men, and gradually their names were forgotten. And if those names had been real names to begin with, everyone knew that they would have been changed long ago to Muslim names, and those brothers would have disappeared into the larger Nation of Islam. But Hayer's affidavit held a solid lead. Hayer said that all of the assassins came from the same mosque, and it wasn't the Harlem Mosque, as the police claimed.
Everybody in the group of assassins came from the Newark Mosque. They all were Jersey people. If these had been people from the Fruit of Islam in New York, everybody would have known them. But they were not. And that's why they got away with it, because they were people nobody knew.
Hey, Charlie, good to see you, bro. People used to call Newell the Mecca. This is the Mecca of the community. There's something special here about Newell. It was the conviction, the fervor, the thunder, the demand for strength and love for the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was overwhelming here in Newell.
Be thankful and grateful you're a Muslim and you're a believer. That Allah has allowed us to hear this call to Islam.
Back in the early days, the nation in Newark and other places, they were recruiting brothers from prison. So a lot of them came from the street, and the nation was cleaning them up now. I never seen so many men lined up in military formation. They had discipline and camaraderie. It just blew your mind. You know, I mean, there's no way you wouldn't want to be attracted.
Now, there's one thing I got to respect the Nation of Islam on is the discipline they have with each other. You know, like, you know, now besides the political levels, the higher levels, but the base levels is discipline. And I got to give it a whole lot of respect.
To that.
Elijah Muhammad, he was talking to people who were friendless. This man gave us dignity. I'm saying, you know, he gave us dignity. All of us were around the same age, 18, 19, 20. All of us used to be in the pool room together. All of us used to hustle together, you know. And then hearing that message turned our life around, and we all met back up in the temple. The nation blew up. It was just a dynamic time for us. We will start opening up businesses, you know, steak and takes, clothing businesses, you know, everywhere we looked, you know, especially in Europe, on every main thoroughfare, Clinton Avenue, Springfield Avenue, Hawthorne Avenue, Chancellor Avenue, they were Muslim establishment. New belonged to us. Right. And what Elijah Muhammad taught us, you know, it was the right time in the right place with the right people, you know, and we took it and we ran with it.
The so-called American Negro have to be re-educated. They have to be completely made up again. And Islam gives him that qualification that he.
Malcolm is paroled from prison August 7th, 1952. He goes to Chicago very early on, and he meets up with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. That's their first meeting.
Initially, it was the relationship of a father to a son. Elijah Muhammad represented salvation for him.
We have come to hear and to see the greatest and the wisest and most fearless black man in America today.
Elijah Muhammad saw in Malcolm this level of enthusiasm in his embrace of the teachings of the Nation of Islam. Elijah kind of took Malcolm under his wing.
Elijah Muhammad.
Malcolm was the only minister that was allowed to drive the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's car. When he came to Chicago, he allowed him to drive his car. He gave him money. Elijah put his wife, Sister Betty, put her to nursing school. Honorable Elijah Muhammad paid for that.
He had it like that. Nobody else had it. Not even Elijah Muhammad's own children had it like that.
Honorable Elijah Muhammad's son, one they called Captain Muhammad, he never liked Malcolm. I heard him say that Malcolm had more authority in his father's house that he had. And so he didn't like Malcolm much at all.
Malcolm was clearly everything that they were not. You know, articulate, brilliant, a bona fide intellectual. You know? So they feared him from the beginning. They resented him and they feared him. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد الله أكبر.
Islam is a religion that militates for justice.
Allah.
And all the signs point to the fact that regardless of who else may have been involved,
Allah.
the men who carried out this crime called themselves Muslims. That's very tough for me to accept as a Muslim. Very tough.
That was a Muslim at that time. Accepting honor from Elijah Muhammad as a messenger of God, I felt that as a member of the Fruit of Islam, the Nation of Islam, that for me to stand up in regards to what was taking place was the right thing to do.
After years behind bars, Talmadge Hayer started to openly regret his role in killing Malcolm.
I can't change that what has been done. I can only say that I am deeply sorry for my participation in this. And I know there will be people who can never forgive me. But I pray, and in my prayers, and I pray 5 times a day, and I ask Almighty God, Allah, to forgive me.
And not only did he come clean about his own role, he continued to agitate for the release of the 2 brothers who were serving time with him, who he said were innocent.
And even during the trial, I had stated myself that Norman Butler and Thomas Johnson were not involved in the killing of Malcolm X. And I would like to see the brothers exonerated.
Thomas Johnson and Norman Butler always maintained their innocence. They said their status as well-known adversaries of Malcolm would have made it impossible for them to get inside the Audubon ballroom that day.
All those people knew me. And if nothing else, they would have stopped me or searched me, or in any event, they would have known that I was there.
What would have happened had you tried to get into the Audubon ballroom?
At that time, well, I would probably have to have at least 2 machine guns.
I wasn't on trial. The Nation of Islam was on trial. I was just a piece that no one cared about.
Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam. How are you?
I have been reading about you for about 40 years, man. Believe it or not. And it's I know it's been a long journey, but you look well, brother. You look good for a long time. So when you was incarcerated, how did the general prison population react to you? You know, because people love Malcolm.
If they thought I was guilty, I'd been dead.
Yep.
This is prison.
He's right. If they knew, the prisoners knew that he was guilty and actually killed Malcolm, he would have been dead already. He would never made it out alive. But they knew he didn't do it. And everybody else knew he didn't do it. And the other guy didn't do it. It was somebody else.
You can't live in prison for 20 years and people don't want you to.
And I can imagine the streets knew that you were guilty of that.
Everybody in Harlem know. Everybody in the neighborhood know that I didn't do it. Because if something had to be handled or dealt with or whatever, it was never done by the people from the place that it happened. If this is going to happen in New York, the people wouldn't come from New York. In this case, you know they came from New York.
So, you know, man, I always wanted to ask you, man, you know, because you was a fruit. I mean, you was a soldier, and you know the devotion that you had and all the brothers had to the nation, right? When you got convicted, did you feel like the nation abandoned you?
Well, my children had to go to school. My wife at the time needed work or a job or needed someone to look out for financially, but they didn't look out for me. They didn't look out for the children.
Wow.
They should have took care of all that stuff.
Wow.
I mean, you know, just things just didn't happen the way.
And Elijah Muhammad realizes both the benefits and dangers of this. And for a while, they coexist uneasily. But it's going to have to break apart. This was never going to have a happy ending.
The Muslim
bottom rank and file is a low-income group.
All right, we're going to play the third one. Again, I got to kind of skip over for time's sake as well as kind of duck and dodge and jab the algorithms, algorithm gods. And if you want to see it, let me do it. Hold on. If you want to look at it, it's on, I believe it's on fusion.tv. Yeah, it's on fusion.tv. If you want to look at it, let me, now again, you might have to pay like a little subscription, whatever the case may be. Let me look on here. Well, actually, if you have, let me do it this way. Let me do it like this. Oh. Okay. Yeah, if you want to take a look at that, it's on Fusion. If you got satellite, got AT&T, Universe, Cox, Dish, Google Fiber, Mediacom, Spectrum, Sutlink, and Verizon. If you have any of those listings here, you can catch it on TV. This is I'm gonna send you the list. Okay, there it is right there. If anybody wants to know where it's located. Abby says it's on Netflix. Okay, it's on Netflix. And it's called Who Killed Malcolm X? Who Killed Malcolm X?
Will grow intellectually so that you can understand the problems of the world and where you fit into in that world picture.
Brother Malcolm might have been that Messiah who could have unified and electrified the Black nationalist organizations. And that's what they did not want.
The Bureau's investigation of Malcolm X really picked up in the early 1960s as he became much more of a public figure because of his influence in bringing members into the Nation of Islam. The Bureau, like much of America, was very afraid that radical revolutionary violence was on the horizon. And they were very concerned that perhaps there would be a leader to rise to focus that anger. And they took it on themselves to look for ways to try and prevent that.
Remember, Malcolm is political. Elijah Muhammad is religious. And the FBI's worst fear is that Elijah Muhammad will become more political. The Nation of Islam, which already has a paramilitary structure, could then be converted into soldiers for struggle. So the FBI was determined to use counterintelligence techniques to create more distance and schisms between Malcolm and Elijah Muhammad.
Salaam alaikum. Mr. Moderator, our distinguished guests, brothers and sisters, our friends and our enemies.
He said if you have a fear about being coming under the FBI, then you should not get involved in me.
Everybody is here.
Sometimes they would have agents to attend meetings, but that depends on
Islam at this time was making an incredible amount of money through their business empire. So for Malcolm to be out there making all these political statements, it's threatening their money, and it caused the nation a lot of problems.
We do believe in defending ourselves if we're attacked.
Elijah Muhammad is against the police brutality, but doesn't want Malcolm to take this active stance, and Malcolm has to come home.
Many of you thought we should go right on out then and make war on the white man. You wanted to do it
with yourself, didn't you?
And Malcolm was very embarrassed by that. Because after all of this rhetoric about an eye for an eye, you guys did nothing.
Because you don't like the idea of white people shooting black people down, do you?
And this was escalating tensions between Malcolm and the nation.
And the white men should be...
So Malcolm wanted to go after the LAPD and get revenge for killing members of the Nation of Islam, but Elijah Muhammad told him, no, you will not do that. And so that made a fool out of Malcolm. And trust me, if Elijah got sick and Malcolm took to him, oh boy, it will be something else. It won't be no games being played.
That God has given the Honorable Elijah Muhammad the control over his followers that he has, so that they can play it cool, calm, and collect.
At this stage of the game, based upon information that the Bureau received through their taps and through other sources, they began to see some ripples. They began to see that all was not well in paradise.
The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said we were honeycombed with enemies who wanted to destroy the movement from within. Whether they were working for the FBI or working for the New York Police Department, the enemies of the Nation of Islam wanted to kill two birds with one stone.
The FBI had 3 human informants in the Nation of Islam whom it regarded as top-level informants. That top level is simply an abbreviation for top level. At the top of the Nation of Islam, it was a very small little pyramid. So when we had the FBI saying that they have 3 top-level informants, the potential pool of individuals is less than 10 possible people.
Why would he say that? And especially the Kennedys.
I think at this point, Malcolm was tired of this kind of political game that Elijah Muhammad was playing. Look, all the violence that this government...
Now, I got to give Abdul Raham Muhammad credit because he the one that did all this research on Malcolm X for last, 30 plus years. It was Abdul Raham Muhammad's research and independent research at that. Independent research and study that has brought forth this case with Malcolm X. It was Abdul Raham Muhammad. That's the brother who actually brought this forth. You know, if it wasn't for him, let me put his name out there. Hold on. Let me do this real quick. Okay. That's the brother name who brought this forth.
Has brought to other parts of the world is coming home now. That's our teaching.
What I said, the same thing that everybody says, that his assassination was the result of the climate of hate. Only I said the chickens came home to roost, and which means the same thing.
Because the president died, we're not going to speak the truth.
But you did not say that you were glad the president was killed. No, that's what the press said. What would I look like saying that I'm glad the president was killed?
John Ali was there. He claims that he wasn't, but he was. And he ran to the phone, he called Chicago. He said, Mr. Malcolm, he said this about the president. And the next day,
this statement is from Messenger Elijah Muhammad to the Muslims of America. Mr. Malcolm has been suspended from public speaking for the time being.
They're managing through a bad time.
I was the captain over the mountains. They called me Captain Sam back in that time.
This is Sam Saxon, leader of a militant Miami mosque. They are black Muslims, and the FBI says the movement is a potential threat.
So I was in the streets of Miami selling papers. I heard somebody holler across the street, "Hey, brother!" He said, "Yeah, I'm Cassius Clay. I'm gonna be the next heavyweight champion of the world." I said, "Yeah, man, I know you. You just run your business." And from that day on, me and him hit it off like two peas in the same hood. I signed myself as head of security for Cassius Clay. I introduced him to Malcolm. Uncle Elijah Muhammad set Malcolm down from speaking to the public for 90 days. So we brought Malcolm down to Miami and let him cool out. Give him a little vacation. That's when we cruised. Malcolm was in Miami to recruit Cassius Clay to the Black Muslim movement.
Now, in a way, Malcolm X was getting the Cassius Clay or Muhammad Ali to get back in the good graces of Elijah Muhammad. And this was going to be his break. He like, I'm going to get right back in there. I'm going to get back right in there. I'm going to bring one of the biggest stars to the Nation of Islam.
I want to talk with you briefly about your affiliation with Cassius. Cassius has been following the religion of Islam for the past 4 or 5 years. And he's always been the most likable, friendly person in the world.
Cassius Clay finds an image in the Nation of Islam, and especially Malcolm X, that he's really, really attracted to. Clay says, I saw the way he was battling these white folks and defeating them. And he said, I fell in love with him.
I frankly believe that Cassius is in a better position than anyone else to restore a sense of racial pride to not only our people in this country, but all over the world.
Let's like I said, for time's sake, where is that? Here we go. Time's sake, got running through.
In prison, came out of prison into the nation, and this is the first time that he had nobody guiding and putting the boundaries of his life. You're not taking orders from a messenger or what.
Malcolm had the freedom to make himself what he wanted to be.
Now that I have the independence of action, it's my intention to work with everybody or against everybody to try and get some kind of immediate solution to the problems that are confronting our people.
So the word got out that Malcolm would be traveling across North Africa, and he's going to be sitting down and meeting these high-powered leaders and world leaders. He's kind of a roving ambassador, minister without portfolio, president of Black America. My purpose here is to remind the African heads of the state that there are 22 million of us in America who are also of African.
He was being treated like a foreign minister, and the FBI was following him and had people spying.
And see, I'm gonna tell you something. That's what made Elijah Muhammad jealous, because when he went to North Africa, to the Islamic states, they treated him like, a respectable, a statesman. And that pissed off Elijah Muhammad, because Malcolm was still suspended. He was still on suspension from the Nation of Islam. And that really chapped Elijah Muhammad.
Every minute of this trip.
Our problem is not an American problem, it's a human problem. And we hope to impress upon them the importance of their bringing precedent and world opinion upon the United States to become meaningful.
Malcolm had this thought. There's got to be a way for us to bring our collective power together. And he was right.
So after he ended up splitting from the Nation of Islam, he started the Organization of Afro-American Union, OAAU.
The Organization of Afro-American Unity shall include all people of African descent in the Western Hemisphere. In essence, what it is saying
We need to seek some allies among people who look something like we do.
Brother Malcolm understood very clearly that the United States at that time was portraying itself as the beacon of liberty and justice and equality, and that the movement that was going on in this country at the time was no longer to be just considered the civil rights movement. It should be considered the human rights movement.
We feel that the problem of the black man in America is beyond America's ability to solve.
Malcolm exposed the hypocrisy of America and America's treatment of African Americans. I mean, he was embarrassing the U.S. government.
We're prepared to work with some of the leaders of the other civil rights organizations. Certainly, we will work with any groups, organizations, or leaders in any way, as long as it's genuinely designed to get results.
After Malcolm left the nation, he made a trip to Selma to a rally down there. Dr. King was in prison at this time, but he let Coretta Scott King know, Dr. King's wife, that I'm not an enemy to you.
I'm hoping that the other so-called Negro leaders will forget the many bad things that I've said about them, and I will forget the bad things that they've said about me, and we can submerge our differences.
He was attempting to soften his image and make himself more palatable. But now that he's trying to make moves to become a more mainstream voice, the FBI saw Malcolm's ability to indict America and be able to mainstream that indictment as far more dangerous to the stability and safety of the United States than he ever was when he was in the nation.
We need an organization that's ready and willing to take action.
So this is where Malcolm truly became a true threat, because he broke away from the Nation of Islam, number one. His influence still maintained intact. And he was the other nations were warming up to Malcolm's understanding. Even, with King and them being an effective force, that would kind of put the Nation of Islam, well, they would probably put them in a box. So the benefit of getting rid of Malcolm X was great for not only for the U.S. government, but in a way for the leadership of Elijah Muhammad.
Any kind of action.
Malcolm was becoming a cult figure in the country.
By any means necessary.
Malcolm is angry like all of us would be. He's like an NCAA athlete, right? Where you're helping all these people create billions of dollars, and the brand you create turns out to be $1 billion brand. Of course he's enraged. Malcolm says that he's only trying to expose him in the spirit of the truth, but it's not. He wants back what he helped build. Malcolm wants power as much as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
I very much doubt that any of his followers who really are aware of what he has done would continue to follow him.
Malcolm was convinced that once people find out the truth, that there's going to be consequences. He's 100% wrong. He's 1,000% wrong.
So many false things said about Messenger Muhammad and his followers that I could write a book on it.
People needed the Nation of Islam and the idea of it, the thousands of hardcore believers, they needed to believe.
Did you hear that he had mistresses and children by other women other than his wife, Bob?
I knew it. I didn't hear it. I knew it.
Did it bother you to know that?
No, why should it?
That the prophet was going against his own teachings?
Does it bother you as a Christian to know that David looked over his backyard and saw Bathsheba down there? He said, I want that booty. And they said,
sir, yeah, I'm going to stop you right there, sir, because you're full of shit. And number one, the Bible is not a Christian book. It's the book of historical records of the Hebrews. Fuckface. Number two, David was a king. Elijah Muhammad is not a king. Never was, never will be. See, when you're a king, you make your own laws. You make your own rules. You tax the people that you want to tax. Elijah Muhammad did not have any of those powers. He was under the power of the United States government, ideal masters of America. David was under nobody's rulership except God's rulership. Also, Bathsheba was an adult woman. Elijah Muhammad was messing with underage girls. There's a difference. There's a difference. Also, David was punished for what he did when he committed adultery with Bathsheba. God killed his first son out of Bathsheba. And of course, God was not done with him. God also had his daughter Tamar raped. Absalom, his oldest son, took his kingdom, kicked him out of his own kingdom, took all his wives and had sex with him. All his, his other wives. David almost lost the kingdom again. He did lose the kingdom temporarily. Then he gained it back as an old crippled man. So David went through hell for that one act of adultery. David lost his kingdom, almost lost his kingdom. And of course, the Lord wasn't done with that completely, because Solomon fell through the same path and Israel got divided into two, northern kingdom, southern kingdom. Also, again, sir, David was dealing with adult women. Elijah Muhammad was dealing with kids.
She married to her husband, else and her husband of people.
To try and destroy us, we can protect ourselves against them.
The mosque in Newark, Muhammad's mosque, number 25 of the Nation of Islam.
Now, that Muhammad Mosque number 25 in New York, New Jersey is a very key component, because that's where the alleged assassins came from. Didn't come from the Harlem Mosque in New York. It came from the Mosque number 25 in Newark.
Under the leadership of Minister James Shabazz, who was known as a very radical, militant, fanatical type of mosque, and they prided themselves on that. There were rumors that that very building where the 5 assassins who killed Malcolm, this is where they actually came from.
That's who he was. Anything outside of that, we came out of that paradigm, what happened then? I look like Muhammad talking about it. And he came out with drugs and alcohol. He came up out of that stuff. He was teaching about Elijah Muhammad. It was a sterling example of you can reconstruct your life in a very positive way. And he did it from the teaching about Elijah Muhammad. All that he did with that, and turn around and betray to do that. That hurts, man.
Now, the chief that is spreading knowledge into the hearts of whosoever will spend a few minutes listening.
But remember, we are all young and impressionable.
Well, sir, Malcolm was telling the truth about Elijah Muhammad. He did have a whole bunch of illegitimate children outside of his marriage, particularly young underage girls. What Malcolm spoke was true. You just didn't like it.
It was going Malcolm portrayed about Elijah Muhammad. Whoa, what? Hey, a lot of people didn't like that. I guess a lot of people wanted to make moves on that.
You wouldn't put it past some of your followers to try and get Malcolm.
I wouldn't put it past a Christian to put somebody out for talking about Jesus. Just outright.
You couldn't be lukewarm about Malcolm during that time. There was no middle ground. So you had to be on one side or another. But I don't know too much about James Shabazz having anything to do with the assassination of Malcolm X. In fact, knowing how the nation moves, I would think the opposite, that if there was anybody that was involved in the conspiracy, you want to move independent of the minister. FOI would never do anything that would come back on nation leadership. So even if that energy would have been put out there, it would have never been anything that could have been directly attributed to James Shabazz.
Brother Qasim, you were here at the time when Malcolm broke off and started making these statements. Can you express how you felt and like how you interpreted what was going on with Malcolm?
I don't know what was going on with Malcolm. I only knew what was going on with me and how I felt.
How did you feel?
How could he say those things? You know, I didn't believe it. How could he say those things? Never even entered my mind that Malcolm was right, and it was like a man turning on his father.
Elijah Muhammad has gone insane, absolutely out of his mind. Besides, you can't be 70 years old and surround yourself by a handful of 16, 17, 18-year-old girls and keep your right mind.
Damn! I love that. Hold on, let's play that again.
Muhammad has gone insane. Absolutely.
And it was like a man turning on his...
Elijah Muhammad has gone insane. Absolutely out of his mind. Besides, you can't be 70 years old and surround yourself by a handful of 16, 17, 18-year-old girls and keep your right mind. You can't do it.
Newark's position against Malcolm probably wasn't no different than any other city that had a temple and a minister and a fruit that loved Elijah Muhammad and what he did. And of course,
Now, Muslim means well. It's those at the hierarchy who are living off the fatted calf who don't mean well. Elijah Muhammad Jr. come to New York when Elijah Muhammad was at the Armory in June of last year. Junior stood up and told the fruit that my tongue should have been put in an envelope and sent back to Chicago by now. And because
Junior is Elijah Muhammad's son, he's the Assistant Supreme Captain of the Nation of Islam. It was always thought that he was the voice piece of his father. And so when Junior said something like that in front of hundreds of FOI, that is nothing short of a direct order by Elijah Muhammad telling his charges that it's okay to take out Malcolm.
Well, let me ask you this. You were there. Did you hear that kind of language? Can you clarify that?
What I remember is that it said, you should cut out his tongue and I'll put it in an envelope, stamp it, approve, and send it to my father. Worse to that effect.
Norman Butler was one of the three men convicted of murdering Malcolm. He says he was innocent, and Talmadge Hayer backs him up. As a high-ranking member of the Fruit of Islam, he was there when Elijah Muhammad Jr. spoke at the Armory.
I can't say what it was, how people interpret. I can only tell you how I interpret. I can't tell you what.
Well, how did you interpret?
Hype talk. Just people get excited.
Yeah,
say things
pack
that
talk.
They don't necessarily mean. And in an incendiary environment, all you need is a match. I mean, it's not that. That's not the first time I heard that kind of talk. So, I mean, I wouldn't have reacted to it, but clearly somebody did.
And took it as open season.
Somebody did. 5 people that I know about.
If Norman Butler is innocent, as he says he is, then there are men still out there who, whether through negligence or complicity by law enforcement, got away. But in the 2 affidavits he gave to his attorney, Phil Kunstler,
an affidavit giving the identities of the 4 men who, with Hayer, had done the job. They all came from New Jersey, from the Newark mosque number 25. And their names are Benjamin Thomas, Leon Davis, William Hicks, and a man named Wilbur Kinley. According to Hager, these 4 men were partners with him in the execution of Malcolm X.
the sworn affidavit Talmadge Hayer gave to his lawyer offered some important clues about the plot behind Malcolm's murder. Not only did Hayer list the names of his accomplices for the first time, he also gave details about the plot and how they planned to pull it off.
We decided after looking at the place that we get there early, drift.
According to Hayer, they scoped out the Audubon the night before during a dance where they figured out their positions.
Leon and me up front, Ben and William right behind us. Wilbur at the seat in
in the back of the place. His job was to accuse someone of picking his pocket and throw smoke on him. And Hare even gave specifics about the weapons and who fired what. I had the .45 automatic, Leon had the Luger, William had the shotgun.
Here we have the autopsy. 39 years old, height 6'3", 178 pounds, chest open, cavity full of blood, multiple shotgun slugs in both the chest, heart, and the aorta. That's obviously harsh to look at, but the incision would have been done at the hospital, obviously. But what really killed him was the shotgun.
The shotgun pellet, yeah, and you can see it's like right over the heart. Right. The coroner ruled the cause of death to be the shotgun pellets. It wasn't the .45 or the .38, it was the shotgun that took the life of Malcolm X. So let's stop there.
These are the shotgun shells recovered at the scene.
So when it comes down to it, if you want to answer the question of who killed Malcolm, it was the man who fired the shotgun. He petitioned Congress, but the petition went nowhere, and very few people, including me, have ever seen it. Hare said William X was 27 years old, stocky build, dark-skinned. Lived in Newark, where he was a member of Mosque number 25. And his last name, provided for the first time in Consular's petition to Congress, was Bradley. William X. Bradley. Even to this day, the information Talmadge Hare provided has never been officially investigated. According to Hare, William Bradley lived on South Orange Avenue, right across the street from Mosque 25. With his full name, I could finally fill in some details. I heard that William Bradley played baseball for Southside High in Newark, so I started there. This is the name of Southside High School today.
Yeah, so this is the senior class.
That's the senior class.
This was senior class, yeah. There were about 300 of us. Yeah.
Wow. Was it Malcolm X High School?
By this time, it was Malcolm X. Yeah, Malcolm X Shabazz.
So you were part of the first graduating class.
We were the first. Yes, yes. It was an incredible feeling.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. Yeah. There's been a man identified from right here in Newark who supposedly was the chief assassin, the man that pulled the shotgun, fired the first shot. Were you aware that this man went to this high school?
I had no idea.
Is that right?
I had no idea he went to this high school. Is that a fact?
That is a fact, yeah. He was a baseball star here.
I had no idea.
How do you think Newark reconciles that contradiction?
I don't think the majority of young people here at this high school even know that the murderers of Malcolm came out of Newark. To be very honest with you, I haven't thought once about them. So I don't know who they are. I don't know where they reside. They are asterisks of history, as far as I'm concerned. Where are they now? Well, I don't know where they are.
We don't dwell on that. That's a waste. It's in the history book. Leave it there. Move on.
So people knew who they were, well, but they just let them go.
They what they like. What you say? You going around with revenge? Well, nothing like that.
And it was just a situation. It was inevitable that he would be killed. Whether it was going to be a crew out of Philadelphia, a crew.
All right, let's look at number 5. We got 2, and then number 6 will be the last.
Yes. I knew. He used to actually come here for Juma as well. He went other places, but Muhammad Shabazz, yeah, he used to come here for Juma. He used to go other places, but he used to, because he didn't live too far from here, and he was known as William Bradley. And on the street, they say that he had something to do with Malcolm's killing. it's a touchy conversation, as you can probably see how I'm trying to handle it. But yes, that is something that has been floating around, that Mustafa Shabazz, known as William Bradley, was the shotgun man that took Malcolm out.
Documented that there is a trigger man here in hiding in plain sight. Have you heard that allegation?
Yeah, I've heard it.
Mustafa Shabazz, you know who he is?
Shotgun dude. Right. No, I remember. I know what it's about, you know. And, you know, guy was known for, you know, having a shotgun and all of it. So it made everything kind of sound like it is a possibility that this could be real. There's no evidence of it, but I've heard it, you know. Some of that stuff can be dangerous. So, I mean, that's why I don't like to, you know, deal with gossip. I mean, it's just all innuendo and like circumstantial and this and that. But I've seen him in the community, you know, a couple of times. He's walking around, you know. So obviously, if somebody has proof of that, they should come forward with it. And if they don't, if we don't have any proof of it, they should just let it alone.
I kept asking around Newark about Bradley, but basically he remained elusive. And then I got a tip. I got a call from a person who said, hey, you know what, man? William Bradley was in a 2010 campaign commercial for Cory Booker.
Whoa! Whoa!
I mean, this sounded like crazy talk, you know. It's just I said, what? He said, yes, man. He is in a video.
Violent crime in our city was getting worse, but together, Newark, we took action, adding 300 police to our streets.
It's only a millisecond, you know, that he appears, you know, but I froze it, and there he is. William Bradley, today's Mustafa Shabazz. It was just mind-blowing. It was mind-blowing. This is for the first time that the world has seen the face of the man who allegedly took the life of Malcolm X. He wasn't even trying to hide, you know. He had no fear of being clipped for this crime. And he thought that the process of reinvention was so complete that he was audacious enough to appear on film, on video, for a very popular mayor, now senator.
We are making Newark safer and stronger, and together, Newark, we are taking back our city.
Are you familiar with somebody named William Bradley, Mustafa Shabazz?
In Newark, from Newark? Yeah.
Do you know that he appeared in a re-election campaign video of yours in 2010? And that he is one of the people who allegedly murdered Malcolm X?
That connection I was not aware of, no.
You weren't aware of that?
You are breaking news to me. He's one of the privileged alleged by whom?
By Thomas Hayer, who is a convicted assassin, admitted assassin of Malcolm X.
Wow, I was not aware of that.
Do you want to see it?
Do you have it with you right now?
I think you did.
Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't talk.
40 years ago, violent crime in our city was getting worse. But together, Newark, we took action.
It's that brother right there.
Yeah, no, I know one. I know one. You've never heard anything about his affiliation with it? I have not heard that. I have not heard that. Yeah.
Does it surprise you?
Again, I would love to know the facts. I'd love to know the facts. Yeah.
It's one of many threads of Malcolm's assassination that have not been reopened or unearthed.
Yeah, right. And it's important to get to the truth. And by the way, we all know that there's been wrongful accusations, wrongful convictions, and presumptions shouldn't be made about anybody, but we should get to the truth. And again, so much of this history is tied in with the history of Newark and the history in our state. We should follow the evidence and find out, and we should know these things. But we should not jump to conclusions about anybody. That's really important. Fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, he's been being multiple times off the record, but you know about him. He's the one living assassin, potential assassin.
It turns out that after he was released from prison in 1998, Bradley built a new life for himself in Newark. He married a prominent community activist, and together they founded a boxing gym for local youth. That's probably how he ended up in that Cory Booker ad.
Basically, what our young kids need today, they need someone to get them back in time.
He had become a kind of grandfatherly type figure, a mentor to the youth who's just going to guide the kids to the right path. I had to set my eyes on this gym. I didn't know if I'd see Bradley there. I don't even know if I wanted to. First Class Championship Development Center is what it's called. And I even think they have a daycare center. You can imagine that. But it looks like it's closed now. Eyewitness testimony. That's all they had. There was no physical evidence to speak of.
There was only one way to catch the shooters. That was to find people, and there were hundreds of people in the room to identify who the shooters were. That's what I was concentrated on. There was no physical evidence to be found. And you can, people can pick over that all they want. That's all there was to it.
Today, jurors expect when they hear a criminal case, there will be forensic evidence linking a defendant to the crime. Obviously, DNA has become a major factor in criminal investigation. None of this existed back in the 1960s. We relied pretty much on what people saw, what they heard. We had ballistics evidence in which a gun in the possession of someone matched a bullet that was fired. We had fingerprint evidence that was available in rare cases. And of course, we had statements made by the defendants themselves that were viewed as very compelling evidence.
Both Butler and Johnson had alibis. People who testified they saw them or spoke to them on the phone during the exact time period the crime took place. Butler even had a doctor who testified that he saw him that morning for injuries on his leg that Butler said made it near impossible for him to walk around freely.
The case against Talmadge here is ironclad, but the case against Butler and Johnson is weak.
So the prosecution successfully convinced the jury that the three defendants acted in concert with one another.
So whatever is used against one is now going to be used against the other. So the ironclad case against Hare is now going to be coattailed to the weak cases against Butler and Johnson. And once that happened, their fate was basically sealed.
If you attack me, that's one thing. I know what to do when you start attacking me. But when you attack sleeping babies, why, you are lower than a...
He blames the Muslims on the firebombing of his New York home. Do you have a comment on that? It looks to me like he did the job himself.
There was a bottle of gasoline that was found in his house. We believe that it was put there by either a police person or somebody in a fireman's uniform. Eventually what happens is that the NYPD begins to go off the record to reporters and saying, this is suspicious. We're not sure if a firebombing actually took place. Malcolm may possibly have done this for a publicity stunt. It sends out.
How can a man sit there and say he do it for publicity stunt with his children and wife inside the home? No, they set him up.
The message that you don't have to take Malcolm's security that serious because he's willing to bomb his own house.
You know what the temperature was? It was about 15 or 20. I stood in my underwear, bare feet, in the middle of my driveway with a gun in my hand for 45 minutes, waiting for the police or waiting for the fire department to come. If I want to put on a show, I can find a better way than that to put it on.
Even before the house was firebombed, Malcolm and his family had plenty of reasons not to trust the NYPD.
Has anyone threatened you?
That's all I get is threat. And I called the 114th precinct a few days ago. They informed me that it was nothing they could do, you know.
But in those final weeks, it was clear Malcolm was in dire need of protection. It was also clear that he wasn't getting it.
That is part of the complex tragedy of Malcolm and of being Black in America.
Martin Luther King has been to jail. James Farmer has been to jail. Why, you can't name a black man in this country who is sick and tired of the hell that he's catching who hasn't been to jail.
To turn to the people or the system that inflicted damage on you to protect you. Like, how crazy is that?
So the policemen in this country are the ones who are responsible for the brutality. The policemen themselves have become guilty of violating the rights of the people. So what are the people to do? Call upon the same ones who are victimizing them to protect them? No. They have to protect themselves. Excuse me for raising my voice. They have to protect themselves. But I get excited.
You knew he was in grave mortal danger.
No question.
Didn't you see yourselves as duty-bound to protect this man from an imminent death threat?
I wouldn't say I didn't see that. All I could see was the expense. That's really all I could see. We can't afford it. It's 24/7. Cops, detectives can't do it. But we know he's in danger, and we are duty bound to acknowledge it. So it was then that I struck my cleverest note. I said, the answer is obvious. We'll go off, tell him that his life is in danger. We'll offer him security. He will decline it, and we need to document that. If you look carefully through the New York City Police archives, you will see a document where we offered him security and he declined it. So it was a cynical gesture for sure.
Cynical gesture?
Yes. A cynical gesture, but no, me offering him something I knew he would refuse, and that I expected and wanted him to refuse.
Why did you know he would refuse it?
I know Malcolm. That's why.
I think people should question some of the police who investigated the bombing out there that night, and let them give their story as to whether or not I set those bombs.
Malcolm did not trust the police, and so he did not take security the way that it was needed. And what?
Will you make any effort at all to continue your husband's work? What do you see as the future of your husband's movement, man? Do you think it will continue without him? Since the bombing.
You people are disgusting. This woman just lost her husband. Okay. This woman just lost her husband. And you reporters like, are you going to run the leadership? Or are you going to do this? Or are you going to do that? So she can pull a bullseye on her back?
Your home, has the police made any effort to offer you protection? If Malcolm's assassins are caught, what do you think should be done with them? Did you start to reply to the question about the police protection? Did they make any effort at all to offer you protection?
Well, I guess they did make an effort, yes.
Did they offer you a bodyguard or anything like that?
No.
Do you want police protection?
After he tried and failed to save his boss's life, Gene Roberts left the order.
They couldn't feel anything until I got home.
panic, I started shaking like a leaf. My mom and dad was visibly upset. And, they asked me if I was all right and everything. I said, I'm fine. Told me I had to make a couple phone calls. I called my supervisor up. Told him that Malcolm had been shot. I was told to come into the office the next morning, which was Bureau of Special Services.
So one of his bodyguards was an undercover agent, people.
It's true. Gene Roberts was one of those operatives working for the NYPD in the Bureau of Special Services who was put in to various black groups.
If there's any doubt whether the NYPD really cared about the fate of Malcolm and his family, the story of Gene Roberts puts it to rest. Roberts was an undercover police officer. He belonged to a very secretive unit within the NYPD. He had managed to infiltrate Malcolm's organization, and he rose to the position of personal bodyguard and security for Malcolm.
I've never done anything of this nature before. But at that time, I had a pregnant wife, and they said, let's go out and do it.
We wanted someone to infiltrate Malcolm's new organization. We didn't know where Malcolm was going, or what he was going to do, or whether he was going to break the law. We figured out what we needed. Black male. No roots in the police department, no relatives. And would say, we'll induct you into the police department on January 1, but you never get a uniform, never get a gun. You never even get sworn in.
Nobody knows you except that particular little group, which was Bureau of Special Services. I didn't know whether I had backup or not. I was just out there. As far as I know, I was out there by myself.
Malcolm thought that the police department was monitoring him, but in a very obvious way. I don't think he understood that his closest associate was working for us.
Turns out not only did Malcolm not know about Roberts, the prosecution in the case didn't either, which means that Roberts was never interviewed for the investigation, even though he was right there. I like to think he was standing on post, facing out at the audience, and he could see all of the faces in that audience of 400 people, including the faces of the 5 assassins.
Ain't nobody. I was never told about it. Okay? At the time, in charge of the investigation, I knew nothing about the existence of this man. Nothing. They wanted to protect his identity, but they sure protected it from me. I don't know what side they thought I was on, but I didn't know anything about it.
All right, we're in the last line.
In the evening of February 21st, 1965, Malcolm X was killed. 3 men were subsequently arrested and convicted.
Throughout the 20 years he spent in prison for Malcolm's murder, Muhammad Aziz, Norman Butler, always insisted he was innocent. And Talmadge Hayer, the only assassin ever to confess, backed him up.
Muhammad Aziz, who in those days was called Norman Butler, claims to have had no part in the execution.
And Aziz claimed that the FBI had in its records information that pointed to the real killers.
According to the FBI papers in regard to this case, their theory of what happened coincides precisely with Talmadge Hayer's, so that not only is it his statements, his FBI record. The FBI record says what he says, and he never saw the FBI record.
Well, this thing is absolutely plain. What you're saying is that the FBI has in its records, and indeed all along did, a narrative that would exonerate you.
Talmadge Hayer claimed the mosque that the people came out of, to the ranks that the people held. He said who they were, and so did the FBI.
I keep running up against this idea that the FBI has its own version of events that differs from the official court record.
Let me get the light turned on first here. It's very clear in here that they've got a reasonably good description of the gunman who wielded the shotgun. Bingo. It's clearly based on bureau agents interviewing whomever they could find who'd been in the Audubon ballroom that day.
The source for this report was probably one of the 9 FBI informants in the room when Malcolm was killed.
So it's a very detailed recounting. They say he is a Negro male, age 28, 6 feet 2 inches, 200 pounds, heavy build, dark complexion, wearing gray coat, and believed to be assailant who used shotgun.
I've seen this document already, and I assume the folks investigating Malcolm's murder had seen it too. But I was wrong. Wouldn't this information have been shared with the New York prosecution?
Not necessarily. No New York prosecutor would have ever seen this document, because the FBI would not release a teletype like this outside the bureau.
The man they convicted for carrying the shotgun, Thomas 15X Johnson, is a very light-skinned African American. Someone in the government, whoever filed this report, certainly knew the man law enforcement was accusing of wielding the shotgun did not match this description.
Right.
Getting information from the FBI was always difficult for us. Always. They played at compliance. They were very pleasant, but they never give us anything. The FBI had a phone who was there every single day. Every day, going through all files and repairing.
Muhammad Abdul 25 and serving as a lieutenant of the FOI. So, here it is clearly. The FBI knew that Bradley was a lieutenant in the mosque. Bradley is described right here in their own files as dark-skinned, stocky, and a lieutenant in the mosque, matching the description. The FBI even had a photograph. So the FBI has his picture, his identity, description, and then I found this. It says here, in the event this information is not already in the possession of the New York City Police Department, such information should not be furnished without first receiving bureau authority. Why wouldn't the FBI immediately notify the New York City Police Department? After all, Thomas 15X Johnson looked absolutely nothing like the alleged assassin, and he had already been arrested for wielding the shotgun. There was yet another reference to the fact that the FBI was withholding information. It says that New York has not been advised of the identity of X as a possible suspect. So you have to wonder, could that redacted name be William Bradley? But in August of 1965, months before the trial began, this lead about the shotgun assassin being a dark-skinned lieutenant from Newark was considered RUC, referred upon completion. Basically, that's it. They're closing the file. Just closed it out. For no apparent reason, didn't let the New York City Police Department know. All this just makes you wonder, could Bradley have been an informant working for the FBI? Months later, Johnson, Butler, and Hare were sentenced to 20 years to life for Malcolm's murder. Looks like they allowed 2 innocent man will go to jail. That is a goddamn shame. You know, all of this evidence, all of this. But when I got close enough, it was snatched away from me. I got a phone call, and I could tell by the person who made the call and the briefness of the message, I already knew what the call was about. And the person said, "Are you sitting down?" Bradley is dead. He died today. And I just sat there and tried to process what I was hearing. I should have acted sooner, perhaps. I'm heartbroken, even depressed a little bit, because this man will never stand justice. He'll never have to give an account for what people claim that he did. Time won this one. But, you know, our religion teaches that God is time. So everything happens in his time, because he is time.
So the guy he was looking for, who with the shotgun that the shotgun that killed Malcolm, just passed away.
Here's my son, man. He's 21, man. Remember?
Excuse my profanity. This is insanity. I look at Trump like he ain't amended me.
His life example has given me a model to pass on to my son.
Because I know that Allah got a plan.
And everybody's being affected by this. A whole generation, children, grandchildren. This whole thing produced issues that has caused a fissure, a separation, of distance in my family. When I left them, the oldest was 5. And when I returned in 1985, they were all grown, had children, and were living their own lives and didn't particularly want to hear anything that I had to say. So, and it's basically that now.
Facebook is public spaces, right? That's my daughter. And this is her son.
I essentially don't know my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, or my great-great-grandchildren. I got some of all of those. And I don't know them.
I think this is my granddaughter. I think.
So there's a little that I can say, you know, or we can say to get to each other, except filler talk. I mean, it's not real talk. I'm a father in name, I believe, only.
Prison. Not being there. Not being there.
Yeah, this guy's given a horse and carriage.
On some level, it didn't surprise me that so many people from Newark turned out for Bradley's funeral. But I'm curious, how much do these people really know about this man's history? Many of these brothers are well-respected elders of Newark's Muslim community. Some of them I've met and spoken with. Wali Muslim was a founding member of Mosque 25. And Qasim Athari is the patriarch of one of the biggest Muslim families in the area. But what was most surprising was the presence of a security detail and an elected state official, the Lieutenant Governor of the state of New Jersey, Sheila Oliver. The whole thing just raised a lot of questions.
In Newark and just supporting the emergence of other masjids in the city, and I think that he was just well respected.
And the reason I ask you that is, had you ever heard that Mustafa was associated with the assassination of Malcolm? Had you ever heard that?
I have heard it. You know, in Newark, you know, urban legend. You hear, you know, when they say the streets are talking. I've heard it there.
Would you say it's kind of like an open secret?
I think it's open
like
secret.
people talk about it, it's kind of part of the lore. The city. So the question becomes, you know, when it's just widely known, how is it that he was, you know, celebrated as a hero of the community?
I think in death, people remembered what he had done for so many people and families in Newark. I think there was deep respect for how he had transformed people's lives. I think that is what we saw.
Or perhaps transformed his own life.
Or transformed his own life.
Because he did have a very considerable criminal record.
Absolutely.
Did about 20 years for myriad of crimes, serious crimes.
Yes.
And so perhaps, like you say, this is you saying a kind of redemption that was conferred on him.
Yes, I think so. I absolutely think so.
Mustafa Shabazz, you knew him
very closely. Almost like I know my son, one of my favorite brothers.
Here's something that people would like to know. Mustafa Shabazz rebuilds his life. The community loves him.
He's that kind of guy.
To be a racist, how those...
In the name of El Hajj Willie El Shabazz, because that is how we truly honor Malcolm.
People talk about Bradley's redemption. No one really takes a full measure of the terrible toll that Malcolm's family experienced as a result of his loss.
You think Almighty God, you think Almighty God.
Dang, you good, bro. I'm working on it. But in 2010, they opened up something called the Conviction Integrity Unit. What this unit does, brother, is re-examine old cases and, if possible, exonerate those who were wrongfully convicted.
Just don't believe in these people. I got 20 years of my life to demonstrate that I shouldn't believe in them. So I'm not too sanguine about all this, to tell you the truth.
I hear you.
Look, I understand your drive and all of that. I don't believe in these people.
I believe there's a benefit in correcting the historical record, the history of your family, the history of who you were.
Yeah, but all this is going to, well,
that's an injustice that follows you forever.
I agree with all of that. So, I mean, I hear you, I understand you, but I don't believe you. I'm 81 years old next month. Whatever benefit could have come to me or accrued to me from all of this, I can't give it to my children. Well, I can. Maybe somebody can give it to my children. I mean, if nothing else.
I think it would be important to your children.
Well, maybe
the legacy,
maybe all of this,
Butler family.
all of this is good for my children. It's just hard for me to believe them because these are lying people.
But you won't stop me from
No. If you get fine, do it. But I'm not.
Well, I'm going to submit.
Wonderful.
We're going to see. How would you feel?
I have no idea. It's got to show up first. Then when it shows up, I'll let you know. Whatever you want to do with it, I'll support you. Yeah. The branches respond to light.
So Abdul Rahman Muhammad did submit a petition. Now, again, I kind of had to trim it down for the time being, and actually, the brother was exonerated. This last week, he was exonerated for crimes that he did not do. So, the brother Abdul Rahman Muhammad, y'all got to thank that brother for actually. I'm gonna put his name out there. This is his name. This is the man who was behind the driving force of finding out who killed Malcolm X. He was the driving force behind who was researching, doing all the necessary work to get these men exonerated. So I got to give respect to him. I mean, I really got to give a lot of respect to this man because, I mean, he's the one that pushed it. He, you know, let me see if I can get a picture of him. Okay, let me look on here. Let me do this real quick. Let me share the screen. This brother right here is the driving force behind getting those brothers exonerated for crimes they did not commit. This brother right here. Independent investigator. This brother right here. He's the one. If it weren't for him, those guys would have still been considered guilty. So, I mean, y'all give that brother his flowers because he's the one that made it so. He's the one that made it possible. He made it possible. But like I said, I'm gonna shut this down, people. I think we've surpassed over the time. I appreciate everybody for coming in and listening, and listen to this. If you want to, let me do this real quick. Let me do this. Okay, this is who killed Malcolm X. This is right here. So, check this out. Check it out for yourself. I suggest you watch it in its entirety like I did yesterday. Actually, yesterday I was up most all night watching it just to try to get an understanding what it was about. But yeah, like I said, I appreciate everyone being patient, taking the time out to listen. I know it's Sunday night. I know people about to be going to bed and all that sort of thing. So I'm going to go ahead and shut it down. This is Jack Newtown. You got email me at jackradioshow1@gmail.com. You got any questions, comments, or concerns in regards to of who killed Malcolm X? You got any questions, comments, concerns in regards to that? Email me at jackradioshow1@gmail.com. I'll provide any type of source references if you want to watch Who Killed Malcolm X on your own. I think everyone should watch it. I appreciate everyone for coming in. Appreciate Donna. Appreciate Dome. I appreciate Abby. I appreciate BG. I appreciate who else came in. Yeah, pretty much those people came in and comment. I can't see everybody because of the string thing, but I appreciate everyone for coming in. I appreciate everyone for hanging out, for staying in with me. It's been over 2 hours, 2 hours, 30 minutes. I appreciate everyone listens y'all time. Y'all be safe out there. Like I said, you can find it on Fusion. It's on cable. It's on satellite channels on Fusion. And it's a good documentary. I suggest you watch it. Abdul Raham Muhammad is the guy who was the driving force behind getting those brothers exonerated for a crime they did not commit and find out who actually did it. The man who actually did it is now deceased. So, I mean, it's nothing you can do there. But, all right. Thank you very much. I appreciate everyone. And y'all have a good night.